not one ingredient in apple pie is indigenous to North America. Not the apples, not the flour, not the butter or lard, not the cinnamon, not the sugar, not the nutmeg.
You're watching It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luse. And when it comes to ingredients, my guest today is someone who knows what she's talking about. Padma Lakshmi. You might know her as the host of Bravo's Top Chef.
Please pack your knives and go. You are Top Chef!
Or as one of this year's Time 100 honorees. And now she's bringing us a top-tier food travel show set in our own backyard. Taste the Nation. The show takes viewers from Cambodian communities in Massachusetts to Nigerians in Texas and a Greek enclave in Florida, all while asking one very pointed question. What even is American food? With each dish, the show provides context and history that'll leave you feeling both smarter and hungrier. Padma Lakshmi, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Hi, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you. So to get started, the new season of your wonderful show, Taste the Nation, is out now on Hulu. For those who haven't seen season 1, could you talk to me about what you do on the show and also what the show's aim is?
Sure. It is a travel, culture, and political show that is masquerading as a food show. It is, of course, also a food show because that is the language with which I process the world. And that's also the language that most people are used to hearing me speak. I wanted to explore different communities in America through the lens of food as a Trojan horse in a way, just as the thing that would get us into these homes and into these people's lives. And we try to look at the big issue of immigration in all of its facets.
Right. I want to talk about sort of the different postures that you have on Top Chef and also on Taste the Nation. On Top Chef, you are kind of a tough critic. Like, people know that you have a well-honed palate and that you know what tastes good. You know when they're hitting the mark. It was actually said in your Time 100 dedication that you were described as unafraid of being disliked on the show. But on Taste the Nation, you take a different approach. You are an adventurer, you're a traveler. How do you toggle between those two modes in your eating journey, I guess?
I know Ali Wong, who's a friend of mine, wrote that, and I took that as like a backhanded slight that a girlfriend would say about you and get away with. But the truth is, my job, I hope, is many things on Top Chef, but it's also to give honest feedback in a way that's constructive to the chef and helps them do better in the next challenge should they stay in the show. And I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for all of my contestants. And, I'm there every day with them, and they're like my new 6th grade class for the season. So it's not that I'm afraid to be disliked. I just am afraid not to be truthful. On Taste the Nation, I don't have to be a judge. The fact that they're on my show means I've already deemed them worthy of being on the show. The judgment comes in wanting them on my show for whatever reasons I do. So I don't have to be critical of their food, Also, I'm coming to them in their house. They're not coming knocking on our studio door and asking to be a contestant. Like, yeah. Like, I am a guest in their home. They're sharing their lives with me. We don't pay them, like, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so if I want to go there and, sort of disrupt their lives, it's because I think they're very worthwhile and I want to talk to them and eat their food.
That's such an interesting approach. And I'm glad you bring that up, that you are coming to them, you're going into their homes and into their communities. About Taste the Nation, you've said that the first season is kind of for people that don't really agree that immigrants have a lot to offer this country. Like, you're keeping them in mind when designing the show. Now going into the second season, has the framing of the show changed or evolved based upon the work that you did in the first season?
No, it hasn't really. I created the show to do something artistic with my political views that is more entertaining than me just standing on my soapbox and giving, a speech at a ACLU rally. And I think it's better to show rather than tell you what my opinion is. Better to show you through the stories and lives of these people told in the first person by these people.
You know, you said that this show is something that you really had to fight hard to make.
Yes.
You worked really hard to get it out there into the world. And at the beginning of every episode, you show a picture of yourself as a child. What part of your younger self is this show speaking to?
It's speaking to the little girl that didn't see anybody who looked like her or had a name similar to hers or ate the same food she ate at home with her hands. When I was growing up, people who looked like me and had my background didn't really get a mainstream platform. And that's a lot of the case still today. I know how fortunate I am to have that kind of media attention on me. And so part of the goal with Taste the Nation is to give my platform to people to tell their own stories in the way they see fit and tell us what they're like, not somebody outside the community assume we know what that immigrant's life is like.
One of the things that me and my team noticed when we were preparing to talk to you and watching your show is how many subtle, important details the show picks up on. So I loved your first episode this season on Puerto Rican pasteles. I currently have 20 in my freezer right now.
You do? Do you make them or do you get them?
I don't make them. My husband is originally from Santurce in San Juan in Puerto Rico. And you go to San Juan and Calle, which is, I go there and eat with my in-laws when we go home to go see them. No, but my husband knows a woman who makes pasteles in Chelsea and we get them at Christmas time.
Really? That's great.
But I mean, in that episode in Puerto Rico, you got into this debate, eating pasteles with ketchup or no ketchup. In another episode, you dive deep into the Afghan community in the DC area and how they prepare this rice dish, Kabuli pulao. And you show that people make it really differently depending on where they're from when they came to the United States. It's kind of like, and one of the big questions was, is there lamb in the pulao or no lamb?
Well, it's also like when they lived in Afghanistan.
Right.
Because, there's scarcity, food scarcity with, so many layers of war from the Russians to the Mujahideen to the Taliban. To, there's certain people who don't think it has carrots and raisins because they've never grown up with carrots and raisins because they just didn't have them.
It wasn't available. But I mean, these subtle differences, ketchup or no ketchup, carrots and raisins and lamb or none of those things, the show manages to capture them and turn them into really important parts of conversation, getting into the stories beneath those small differences or differences that seem small until you look deeper into them. What felt important about investigating those subtle differences in the way that people prepare these dishes they love so much?
I think because food can be a metaphor for so many other things, and they also are born out of what that culture has gone through, and the choices we make about food are often much more than about our preference or taste. Food kind of permeates every aspect of our lives. The only two things that we really need to survive are food, water, and love. So, it's really important. And that's what I mean when I say it's a Trojan horse. It's like, yes, I'm talking about, preference of ketchup or no ketchup, but I'm actually saying do you want this Yankee input into something that is so dear to your heart? And so those pasteles are Puerto Rico and that ketchup is American.
Right.
Presence. I'll put it like that. I think Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. We don't like to call it that. We call it a territory, but it's actually a colony. We are colonizing Puerto Rico. And I know people who walk around in New York City thinking when they see a Puerto Rican person they're immigrants. They're not immigrants. They're Americans. They have an American passport. And we've been occupying their land for a long time.
Getting more into how some of these small food differences or differences in food preparation have maybe affected your life or shown up in your life. Is there a story from your own life where you felt the importance of getting those subtle differences right?
I was 6 years old and living in Queens when they consecrated the temple there, the Ganesh Hindu temple.
Mm-hmm.
And I love dosas. They're very South Indian, and South Indian food is much different than North Indian food. Dosas are, these fermented rice and lentil crepes, like made with batter. You see it in the Indian episode in season 1. So I love dosas, but I never made dosas not in an elder family member's house. Like after I went to college and had my own apartment, I never really made dosas. And then at some point when I moved back from Europe after modeling in my 20s, I had a pied-à-terre here in the city. I started going back to the temple again in Queens, and then I don't know, I can't remember what year, but they opened a canteen in the basement of the Hindu temple, and I gotta tell you, it made me much more religious. So we would always go there. We would do a lap around upstairs to all the deities, break a coconut, have it blessed by the priest, and then go down and chow down in the cafeteria, like literally with metal folding chairs, an orange plastic tray. And I think they still use like styrofoam separated, those segregated plates, which is so heinous. But you can get a mountain of food for like $3. So eating that and having had the goodie bag from doing the ritual offering upstairs where you always break a coconut, it's called a puja, and you also give them the name of a relative and stuff. And so we would bring back those items, which is called a prasadam, blessed food. And all of a sudden I had fresh coconut, and now you can get fresh coconut maybe at Whole Foods. But like 10, 15 years ago, you would have to go to Spanish Harlem or you would have to go to Patel Brothers in Queens. So all of a sudden I had this fresh coconut, and then I started, eating it because that you eat it always, right, for good luck. But then I started grating it and making coconut chutney. And then it made me crave dosa. And so the importance of having that coconut in my kitchen is monumental, because honestly, it makes me feel like home. The smell of coconut frying with mustard leaves and curry leaves and sesame oil, and that popping sound, and the smell and the sound when it hits the coconut chutney, shh, like that. That is such a sensorial, deep, visceral pleasure that takes me back to the bosom of my grandmother's love. And that is why these foods are important, because they contain a multitude. They contain with them all of this experience of being human and being alive and being connected to your ancestors and also to your own identity. Food tells you who you are, and it's the way that most immigrant parents pass down their culture when they're away from the country they grew up or were born in.
So a dosa is not just a dosa.
No.
What I find really remarkable about this show is that it's really deeply researched. You all are looking back decades and centuries sometimes to look at immigration patterns and, colonization routes and, all sorts of things. Can you tell me more about working with your production team?
Sure. I love my producers. They are amazing. They all take their jobs so seriously. It is spellbinding. And I'm just there with a bunch of fellow nerds, and we all get off on this shit, we really do. Like, for me, it's really, really enlightening. And I'm so lucky and happy that there are enough people that find this stuff just as interesting, and so I'm happy that the show has resonated with so many people. We were lucky enough to have like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think I've gotten 100% on anything in my life. So I'm very happy about that. So are my relatives in India.
Look, if you make the family proud,
Exactly.
That's the best you can do. Food is the way that so many of us take pride in, celebrate, communicate our heritage, and also pass it down to the younger generation among us. One of my favorite moments in the show was in the first season, the third episode, about the Indian diaspora community in New York City, where you are from.
Oh, in season 1, yeah.
Yes, in season 1. And there's a moment where you're having breakfast with your daughter and you're asking her, like, does she prefer dosa or pancakes? And she wrestles with it back and forth. and you're kind of watching her, and she's like, sorry, I do like American pancakes.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of so many moments with me and my mom. Even like, I think about like cornbread dressing is a food that is like a staple in Black American households at the holidays. I didn't like it until I was 16 or 17 years old. And I know, and it takes forever to make. I know.
It's like, you don't like what? I know. It's and that's what it is. And it happened to me with my kid, and I never understood, like, it's attached with so much baggage and heritage. And so it's like saying, I don't like being Black, right?
Right.
It
can feel like that.
Yeah, it can feel like that.
Yeah, to the caretaker.
Yeah, to the person
elder,
trying to help you remember who you are. And my daughter's also a biracial child who's growing up in her father's culture, which is what is dominant in
America,
her environment.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So like, it'd be different if she was biracial, but we were living in downtown New Delhi, what I mean? Or Chennai or Kerala.
Right.
So really, I have like less of a chance of imbuing, whatever I can. I don't just do it with food, right? She, I make her sing in Sanskrit, which she's finally said, look, enough now. I've had it for 6 years. I'm not taking Carnatic music lessons anymore.
Oh.
She doesn't know what she's saying in Sanskrit. By the way, neither do I. But I recognize that music from my grandfather singing to me on the veranda when I was sent back every summer to, Madras, to Chennai. And I never got those music lessons because I, lived mostly in America with a single mom who was a nurse. And, there was nobody to teach me classical Indian vocal training. But hearing those songs, hearing that Sanskrit come out of my, 7-year-old child's mouth and doing, scales and ragas, it gives me a deep pleasure that pierces my soul in a way that is hard to put in words. And that is why you better fucking eat that cornbread.
I do now.
Smile.
I eat the cornbread dressing
and
now.
Smile and be like, thank you, mama. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.